Our Story Production presents The Road to Our Story, spotlighting an in-depth look at many of The Road to Our Story magazine's featured articles. So get ready, for you're about to travel on The Road to Our Story.
Hello, I'm Jason Howland, and welcome to Speaking of Health, a place to help you learn how to live a longer and healthier life. It's often called the silent thief of sight. Glaucoma affects millions of Americans with gradual vision loss and in some cases does lead to blindness. Here to tell us more about glaucoma today is Dr. Daniel Peterson. He is a board-certified ophthalmologist from Mayo Clinic Health System. Thanks for joining us today on Speaking of Health.
Thanks for having me, Jason. It's good to be back.
Well, today we are talking about glaucoma. You hear a lot about it, especially for older Americans. What exactly is glaucoma?
Glaucoma is a disease that affects the optic nerve, which is the structure that connects your eye to your brain, sort of like a cable. Glaucoma slowly, usually, damages that structure and causes you to lose vision. Glaucoma is typically caused by a high pressure inside of your eye. Your eye is filled with something called aqueous humor, which is derived from your blood but is similar to water. Your eye constantly makes more aqueous humor and drains out the older aqueous humor. And the balance of those two, the production of the new aqueous humor and draining the old aqueous humor, makes the pressure in the eye. If the pressure becomes too high, it can damage the optic nerve.
Where does this aqueous humor, where does it drain and how does it drain?
Good question. The aqueous humor is made right behind your pupil, and it comes forward through your pupil to drain out in a structure called the trabecular meshwork. That is located in the front part of the eye where the colored part of your eye, the iris, and the white part of the eye, the sclera, come together. Oftentimes in glaucoma, that drain structure does not work normally.
And are there different types of glaucoma?
Yes, glaucoma actually refers to a series of diseases. The most common is called open-angle glaucoma, where the trabecular meshwork is located. Looks normal when we look at it, but it just doesn't seem to drain normally. But there are other kinds of glaucoma. There's something called pigmentary dispersion glaucoma, where pigment from the iris gets deposited into the angle and the meshwork, sort of like clogging the drain, if you will. There's something called angle closure glaucoma, which is different in that it tends to happen very rapidly, and where the iris essentially plugs up the meshwork, and then that leads to a very rapid rise in pressure, and that's a medical emergency. There are other less common types of glaucoma. There's something called low tension glaucoma, where the patient actually doesn't have a high pressure in the eye, but for some reason that pressure is too high for that patient's particular eye, and it seems to damage the optic nerve much like regular glaucoma does. There's another common condition in Scandinavian and Northern European folks, which is called pseudoexfoliation glaucoma, and it's similar to pigment dispersion glaucoma in that it's a deposition of sort of a granular material into the meshwork, and again it sort of clogs the drain, if you will.
And all of these different types of glaucoma, they all center around that pressure from that fluid, right?
Correct. Again, most of the time the pressure becomes too high, but even in the low tension glaucoma, the pressure, though, although it's within the range of what we would consider normal, it's too high for that particular eye, and we think it's the pressure that injures the nerve in some way.
And that affects your vision then?
Correct. All of the retina, which is the back of the eye, leads to nerves that go through the optic nerve to the brain, and if that optic nerve is damaged, then despite the eye receiving the information, it can't transmit it to the brain, and then you essentially lose vision.
So what are some of the symptoms of glaucoma?
Unfortunately, like you mentioned earlier in the show, oftentimes it's essentially silent or asymptomatic until late in the disease. The most common problem caused by glaucoma is loss of peripheral vision, or the outside of your vision. And again, because folks don't seem to pay as much attention to that, it can advance significantly before it becomes a problem. But in its very advanced state, it can cause essentially tunnel vision, where you lose all your peripheral vision or are looking through sort of like a tunnel or a pinhole.
How about the acute angle closure glaucoma that you talked about, the sudden onset? What are some symptoms of that? Are they different?
Yes, very good question. That tends to, like we discussed, be a rapid onset, and folks tend to have significant symptoms with that. The eye will start to hurt a lot. It'll turn red. You may get a headache. Some people become nauseous and vomit. And again, that's a medical emergency that must be treated right away, or you'll go blind within a matter of days, typically.
And what causes that? Does that happen from injury, or does it just happen? Or?
Most of the time it has to do with an eye being essentially more crowded. There's less room. In folks who are, say, farsighted, certain ethnic groups, their eyes are just more crowded together, and there's less room for the drain, and so it's more likely to become blocked.
So when should you see your eye doctor?
Over the age of 40, it's a good idea for everyone to have a screening eye examination, and depending on the results of that, if it's normal, every 2 years or so, until the age of 60, at which point people should have essentially an annual eye examination. Now, if your ophthalmologist detects any abnormality during the screening examination or any time thereafter, you may be required to come back more often to follow you closely.
So because we did talk about glaucoma being that silent thief of sight, and that you don't initially have symptoms, it's probably very important that you do see your doctor, right?
Absolutely, because again, it can become very advanced before the patient would notice any kind of problem. And unfortunately, glaucoma is a disease that's irreversible. When vision loss occurs, we can't recover it. So it's most important for us to prevent vision loss from occurring.
So what are some of the risk factors for glaucoma?
Like we talked about, the anatomy of the eye can play a role. Farsighted eyes are more prone to angle closure glaucoma, but nearsighted eyes are actually more prone to the open angle glaucoma. If you have a family history, people in your family have a history of glaucoma, your risk is higher. Certain ethnic groups, like we talked about, African Americans have a higher risk of developing glaucoma. Diabetics also have a higher risk of developing glaucoma. So there are multiple risk factors that we are aware of.
So are there other ways to cause glaucoma other than, it's just hereditary, it just happens? Can it also happen other ways too?
Yes, an eye injury is unfortunately a significant way to develop glaucoma. So if you suffer an eye injury, it's important to be examined by your ophthalmologist to make sure that none of the internal structures of the eye, including the angle where the drainage occurs, has been injured. People who suffer a significant eye injury are at an increased risk for decades for the possible development of glaucoma.
And when you say eye injury, do you mean something that's actually stuck into your eye or hit into your eye, or could it be a head injury also involved with that, or is it mainly just something in your eye?
Usually it involves a direct injury to the eye, such as a blow or something striking the eye.
And is there a certain age group that the risk factors increase?
Yeah, as folks become older, unfortunately, there's an increase in the incidence of glaucoma.
So if not found early and not treated glaucoma, what can happen to your vision then?
In its most extreme form, people can go totally blind from glaucoma. But again, it's more common to just have constriction of your vision. But again, it's irreversible, and so it's something that we don't want to allow to get to that point.
And if it does get to the point where your vision is getting impaired, you definitely need to go in and see your doctor. And it may not be able to be cured, but...
What we want to do, if we're worried about glaucoma already having begun, or we're concerned that it's going to begin taking your vision, is to treat you. And again, the treatment for glaucoma, even in the face of a normal pressure like the low tension glaucoma we talked about, is to lower your eye pressure. That's achieved most commonly with eye drops, and most people are able to be treated successfully with only eye drops. However, sometimes drops aren't enough. The most common next step would be a laser treatment, where we use a laser to modify the drain structure within the eye to help us lower the pressure by helping it drain fluid out faster and more efficiently. If that doesn't work, sometimes it's necessary to go to surgery in the operating room, but that's less common than it used to be.
Someone comes in, they're having some trouble with their vision, suspect it may be glaucoma, or at least the beginning stages of it. How do you, as an ophthalmologist, how do you test for glaucoma?
What we'll do is to measure the pressure with a machine called a tonometer in the office. Unfortunately, like we talked about, the pressure doesn't tell the whole story, and so we also need to look at the optic nerve, which we can visualize with a good dilated eye examination. We can do some other ancillary tests, a peripheral vision test called a visual field test, and another measurement of the optic nerve called an OCT, which again measures whether there's been any thinning or loss of tissue within the optic nerve.
Well, you talked about treatment and laser treatment. There's a new laser treatment at the eye clinic in Fairmont now, right?
Yeah, we're very excited to now be able to offer something called selective laser trabeculoplasty, or SLT, and it is the newest form of laser treatment for glaucoma, where we do it in the office. The patient is usually very, very comfortable. We numb the eye with some eye drops, and we essentially shoot the laser into the drain structure to make it work better. This is an improvement on the previous laser treatment that was available, which used essentially a burning or a coagulating laser to burn the angle, which caused a lot of collateral tissue damage. This new laser is a much more focused laser that only selectively modifies the angle and causes much less damage.
And so what is the laser clearing out?
The new laser, what it does is it's aimed at some pigmented cells within the drain structure, and by stimulating those pigmented cells, your own body's cells modify the drain structure anatomy to help it to work better.
So are there ways for folks to prevent glaucoma from ever happening to them?
Well, again, like we talked about, the most important thing is to be screened regularly at the appropriate ages. Modifying lifestyle, diabetes, like we talked about, is a risk factor, so doing what you can to avoid developing diabetes or treating your diabetes adequately. Heart disease is a risk factor for glaucoma as well, so again, lifestyle modifications to try to prevent heart disease from developing.
So, Dr. Peterson, I would imagine you have many patients that come in with glaucoma, or at least the beginning stages of glaucoma. What help is there for them, and what do you tell those patients?
Again, glaucoma is a treatable disease, and our treatments that we have available today are much better than they used to be, and we can, in most cases, halt the progression or minimize the progression of glaucoma. The most important thing is to be seen and diagnosed appropriately. Then if we need to treat you, we'll follow you on a regular basis with those tests we do in the office, and if those show any signs of progression, then we modify our treatment regimen to include additional drops or laser or surgery if necessary. So this is a treatable condition, and it's something that we take very seriously.
And so it's very important to have that conversation with your eye doctor. Make sure that you're in regular contact with them, and that you don't just leave it alone, because it's not going to fix itself, right?
Absolutely. Regular follow-up is key to us monitoring the progression of the disease and making any changes in the treatment as necessary.
So over the last 10, 20 years, Dr. Peterson, has the technology changed enough where there's more hope now for patients with glaucoma than there was in the past?
Absolutely. We have better treatment in terms of medications, more options available. We are able to monitor the disease more accurately than we used to be, catch changes earlier before they become more advanced. So glaucoma is a serious disease, but it's something that we can oftentimes control and prevent from worsening. So we absolutely want to encourage folks who have glaucoma to have hope and know that we will do everything we can to preserve their sight.
And it sounds like the new laser treatment in Fairmont is very exciting too.
Yes, we're very pleased to be able to offer that to our community. It's something that is not offered elsewhere in our area, and we feel like it will allow us to take better care of our patients.
Well, unfortunately, we're all out of time, but I would like to thank Dr. Daniel Peterson, board-certified ophthalmologist for Mayo Clinic Health System, for joining us today on Speaking of Health. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great day, everyone, and be healthy.
There you have it, folks. One of the favorite stories ripped from the pages of The Road to Our Story magazine. Let's have a look at another.
Another concert we had at Our Story Studios. Share with us a little bit about this entertainer.
This entertainer is from California. another marvelous singer-songwriter. His name was Joel Raphael, and he brought a musician friend of his with him who is a pianist accordionist. And that man's name is Radoslav Lorkovic, who lives in Iowa. Just a marvelous
He definitely wasn't
piano
born-
player.
He wasn't
keyboard
born
player.
in Iowa.
No, he wasn't born in Iowa. He was born in Russia.
Yes.
First of all, Joel Raphael regularly appears in these folk festivals throughout the country. In
Right.
fact, he's part of something called the Woody Guthrie Folk Festival. He has become so involved in that Woody's daughter has actually given Joel Woody's poems, which had not been set to music. And he has written music for many of those, and he has 2 entire CDs of Woody Guthrie songs.
And he was one of the most impressive performers
Yes, he was.
that you could hear. And he loves Minnesota. And he talked a lot about coming to Minnesota and performing throughout Minnesota. So I thought that was great.
His recent CD is called 13 Stories, and all of the songs on it are his own songs, and he's backed by David Crosby and Graham Nash. You know, Crosby, Stills, Nash Young, for many of those who are interested in 70s music. And 2 of the songs that we saw him sing or heard him sing, we've selected for you to see today, and one is called Steady Letters, and Radoslav is on the piano on that one. And the other is called My Country, and that's from the newest CD, and Radoslav plays the accordion.
A wonderful performance, and let's hear that performance right now.
All I got are these steady letters to carry me home. Reading and writing these steady letters from the windy city to the streets of Rome. Steady letters to ease my mind, steady letters to help me find my way home to the place in your heart. Steady letters when we're far apart. Try to get back to my family and the ones I love that I long to see in the city that I call my own. These steady letters to carry me home, steady letters to ease my mind, steady letters to help me find my way home to the place in your heart. Steady letters when we're far apart. We're looking up at the same full moon, but we're living in 2 different hemispheres. Next time I see you won't be too soon, 'cause I haven't seen you in a couple of years. Steady letters to ease my mind, steady letters to help me find my way home to the place in your heart. Steady letters when we're far apart. We'll carry on these steady letters. How do you think that they will look? Talking about our steady letters, sitting in our war scrapbook. Steady letters to ease my mind, steady letters to help me find my way home to the place in your heart. Steady letters when we're far apart. Steady letters to set me free, steady letters from you to me. Steady letters from me to you, steady letters gonna get us through. My country for a better life. I didn't even say goodbye to my friends. Not to my grandparents, nor to my parents. Oh, sorry, oh, calder, as sad as I said. Rosario Caldera said, as I said. Alone I cried. There was no, only God heard my sorrow and shame. And I didn't leave you one single cent. And alone I left my country in shame. Alone I left my country in pain. These are some words from the victims found inside a boxcar in a small Texas town. Locked from the outside in spite of their plea. Inside was 130 degrees. Inside was 130 degrees. Landed in Texas, Westlake and Houston, Dallas and San Antonio. And they all fitted inside of his heart, even though her borders are so far apart. Even though her borders are so far apart. Que bonito, Los Estados Unidos, Illinois, California, Tennessee. But over on the other side of the border, a piece of the sky still belongs to me. A piece of the sky still belongs to me. These are some words from the victims found inside a boxcar in a small Texas town. Locked from the outside in spite of their plea. Inside was 130 degrees. Inside was 130 degrees. I didn't even say goodbye to the boys. I drink to my friends like we used to do. And now I'm out here, way over the line. Your friend, the illegal, still misses you. Your friend, the illegal, still misses you. A goodbye to El Paso, a goodbye to Laredo. When I crossed that big river on the root of a tree, I never knew how soon I'd be yearning for the land that I love and my family. For the land that I love and my family. These are some words from the victims found inside a boxcar in a small Texas town. Locked from the outside in spite of their plea. Inside was 130 degrees. Inside was 130 degrees.
They say that Hollywood's bounced back this year, coming up with some blockbuster movies on the heels of what was pretty much a lackluster or in the pits kind of a year last year and earlier in this year even. But you know what? I'm really not impressed with Hollywood, and I'm not impressed with what they've done this year. As a matter of fact, I'm disgusted by Hollywood, to tell you the truth. And it's not just because it's a bunch of actors pretending to know politics. You just have to remember, too many people give them way too much credit. Remember this one thing, they're actors, and they're acting. Really, there's a lack of desire on the part of Hollywood moguls to come up with something original, believe it or not, something fresh, something new, something that we can get excited about in a movie. As a matter of fact, it's all the rave these days to pick up an old script from a long time ago, dust it off, trot it back out, recast it so people can throw their money at it. Well, I say it's time for a new view on the movies. You know, movie makers have it easy these days, and they choose to take the easy way out, really. All of them are cheating. That's right. It's just like when I went to Manitou Springs High School and I would look over Clayton Tong's shoulder to try and get the answers and copy them from him. It's the same thing they're doing now, except they're using old scripts. It's either sequels, Harry Potter 15, Pirates of the Caribbean 27, Spider-Man 42, X-Men, or Ocean 65. Or it's remakes, The Pink Panther, Shaggy Dog, War of the Worlds, The Hitcher, The Poseidon Adventure, for crying out loud. Or else all they do is recast them, hire Industrial Light and Magic, throw in some special effects, and boom, sell us a brand new movie. Well, it's not, and I'm not buying it, and you shouldn't either. We should demand something original for all the money that they're spending in Hollywood. You know, seriously, can't they write something original? Can't they produce something original? Can't they direct something original? Well, you know what? They're not really writers anyway. Anymore, they're just copiers. I suppose there's an upside to that. The upside would be the credits will be a lot shorter because all it's going to say is copiers, and it's going to have 50 names, and we're out. Instead of sitting there finishing up our super extra large popcorn and finishing that extra second drink that we got as a free refill just because we could. Anyway, you look at all the other things that happen. Television shows are being remade as movies. Dukes of Hazzard? Come on, 5 seasons was too long when it was on TV. Why do we want to go spend 3 hours in the theater watching them run around like that? Or Miami Vice? Please. It was bad enough when it was on television, but then we only had to suffer for about a half hour at a time, 20 minutes if you count the commercials. What about Scary Movie 4 and the Santa Claus 3? Something's wrong here, and I'm catching on to it. I'm sharing it with you, and we're not going to be surprised by this. As a matter of fact, why can't we go back to something really original like Rocky Balboa? Or, well, how about maybe Apocalypse Now, or The Princess Bride, or The Apple Dumpling Gang? Anyway, that's going to do it for the sequel of the blockbuster remake of Our Story, A New View this time. I'm your remade, recast, and super special effected host, Dave Smith, saying thanks for watching. Cut.